Welcome to the Fairport Central School District public hearing for our village school district budget and the public library budget. If anyone in the audience is willing to ask a question or in need of asking a question, there's a sign up over here on the table where you can write your question down and we can have that question answered. For those of us who are here, exits are clearly marked. Should the evacuation alarm go off, we do need to exit the building. We have two presentations tonight. The first one will be from Carl Gouveia, who is the director of the Fairport Public Library. He will present the Fairport Public Library budget. And then we will have our superintendent, Brett Provenzano, and assistant superintendent for finance, Matt Stevens, who will be presenting the budget for the Central School District. And this is the public hearing that we do have to hold for this purpose. So Carl, if you'd like to start, please, that'd be great.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the school district for giving us this opportunity to present our budget. So this is our budget for the next fiscal year, 2022, and also our 2020 annual report. There have been ongoing and new challenges. Obviously, the one at the front is COVID-19 and its impact on the state economy. We have our increased digital presence. We've been doing a lot of programming online. We've diverted a lot of our funding that we normally use to purchase physical copies of materials of books to online resources. We've got a lot of safeguards in place at the library to protect staff, to protect the public, the community. And we see an increased need for library services, as individuals are applying for jobs, looking for positions, coming into the library, looking for vaccinations and scheduling when that was needed. And there were also another challenge were the governor's cuts to library aid. Every year he, in the executive budget, he cuts library aid, and that affects the system, the Monroe County Library System, and the services it can provide to the Fairport Public Library and other member libraries. And it also leads to the potential for cost share increases, and that's how much money we pay to the Monroe County Library System to be a member. For us, another big or ongoing challenge is potential minimum wage increases. The governor had a set schedule for his minimum wage increases, and it's now year by year, and we find out in October. So we won't know officially what that minimum wage is until halfway through our fiscal year. So that creates a conundrum with in regards to some of our lower paid employees. There are also, of course, the other annual stuff that we normally see: state mandated retirement costs, healthcare, technology costs, and the changes in the Fairport community. So on this slide, you can see our proposed budget for the next year. So 1.5 million for salaries. We've got 647,000 in benefits. Library materials is 311,000. Occupancy costs, that's our rent and utilities and things along those lines. That's 196,000. Our cost shares that I had mentioned earlier to the Monroe County Library System is at 64,000. Then we have our equipment, our leasing, purchasing software is at 94,000. Professional fees or CPA, any potential legal fees is at 9,000. And then all others areas around 79,000. And you can see our total versus the appropriated funds and the tax levy. On this slide, we have our historical budget, so you can see how our increases, or this year where we're not going to increase, have gone. And this is our expenditure budget, and you can see over the course of the year Over the course of the years, we've had a variety of increases. And in this year's budget, what I went through is I went through and I tightened up a lot of the lines in order to keep it flat, and actually had a 0.01% decrease to the overall expenditure. This is our largest expenditure, personnel. We're in the service industry, so naturally personnel will be the largest. And you can see the comparison from our current budget year to next fiscal, and the increases in some lines. And then there were changes that we made within other categories, such as aides. We've changed the way the children's room is staffed, so we were able to see some savings on the aides line for our personnel. And then down at the bottom, our benefits as well, as we've had a number of retirees. The amount of money that we pay towards the state retirement system has decreased because it's the ratio is based upon tier level. So we're seeing a lot of new librarians who are at the higher tiers, 5, 6. So this is the breakdown of our benefits and how much we're putting in towards benefits. As you can see, the New York State retirement has gone down, and just a slight increase in our health insurance and a slight increase in FICA, and all others we were able to drop as well. So this is a breakdown of our non-tax revenue sources, and you can see our fees, fines, printings has been down. It's been down over the year. We're not seeing as much overdue material, so we saw a significant decrease in overdue fines, and not as many people are coming in to print and fax and use some of those other services in the library, so that revenue stream has decreased. Pilot, we're projecting at 16. State aid, as I mentioned before, it's been a struggle with library aid and how much we get from the state. So we're keeping that at 10,000, interest income 1,000. And then we plan to appropriate from our fund balance if we expend everything is 213,000. Now this slide just shows you the property tax cap levy and its calculation and how much we could potentially raise the budget or the appropriations if we were going to. And the levy limit is 1.49%. But with the adjusted tax levy limit based upon prior year carryover, that would have allowed us a 3% increase in appropriation. However, as I mentioned earlier, we are doing a flat budget this year, so there will be no increase. So we have 0% for our proposed current tax year levy. And then this is our fund balance. The money that we have in our balance is placed in several funding categories, from capital to employee separations when we have retirements or resignations. Our library enrichment is donations given to the library for specific purposes, technology improvements, repairs, our cash flow, and then what we plan to appropriate. Now, on this slide, you can see this is how the library has been providing services to the community. This is some of our service data. You can see that there was a significant dip in 2020 in the service, in the amount of books and DVDs and things borrowed from the library. We saw a huge increase in the next line of circulation of digital materials. Our e-books, digital audiobooks went through the roof. Not enough to cover the drop in circulation, because many people still prefer that physical book, that physical DVD. Interesting enough, it's close to 2015. And in 2015, if you remember, we did the renovation at the library, and it was closed for 2 months, from December 2nd. Wait, no, where am I looking? Sorry, so the renovation happened December 2nd, 2014, and ended November 2nd, 2015. In that time, we were over at Parrington Hills. And I want to say, I did the calculation, I think it was 2 months that the library was closed, and the move to Parrington Hills, and then the move back. And those numbers are very close to 2015. And we were physically closed for about 2 months in 2020. We closed mid-March, and then we started doing our, at the beginning of June, we started our curbside pickup, and it was at the end of June, we reopened to the public. We were the second library in the Monroe County Library System to open to the public. And then you can see our visitors to the library were on par with 2015 when we were closed for 2 months. So to me, it makes me feel a bit better. I'd love to see higher numbers, but the fact that we were closed for 2 months in 2015 and saw numbers that were on par with our 2020 makes me feel a little bit better. So in 2020, we still did see 196,000 people walk through our doors. So we're looking at about 250 to about 325 people per day coming in and using our library. Total circulation, as I had mentioned on the previous slide, is 378. So we see about 1,036 items, books, DVDs being borrowed, being renewed at our public library each day. And this is some of our programming data. When I realized we were going to close, I told my librarians, my programmers, we need to take it online. I know, I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You need to brainstorm, we need to evolve and make sure we can bring our programming online for the public. And they did that, and they did that amazingly. We saw a lot of views, a lot of engagement on our Facebook story times and our book clubs. We even continued through Zoom, a lot of programming, such as our career programming, career training. So much so that we saw 16,371 attendees at over 1,000 programs, so about 33 individuals per program that we offered in 2020. And in this list, I'm not going to go through it, but this is some of the benefits of being part of a consortia, being part of the Monroe County Library System. You know, if we tried doing it on our own, it cost us a lot more money. They provide a union catalog. They provide the fiber optics for our infrastructure. They do a lot for our library, and we would not be able to succeed as well as we do without the library system. So we're in our final year of our 5-year plan. We're going to start the process of planning for the next 5 years. We're going to start engaging the community, engaging stakeholders to be a part of this and help us plan for where our public library will be over the next 5 years and where we will go and what kind of services we will be providing. And this is just some of the shift in services I've mentioned. A lot of our digital collection. We have our Overdrive and Libby. We've also started offering Hoopla and Canopy. Canopy offers streaming video content, and Hoopla is ebooks, and especially they do really well digital audiobooks. So you can listen to it right over the phone. It's a fantastic service. And we also had our curbside pickup. First, we started with out in the park through a window, and then later on the hallway. So that way those who were concerned could still utilize the library during the pandemic. And this is the projected cost for 1 year of library service for next fiscal year. Since our budget's staying flat, it should be about $153 per house, assessed at $200,000. So that's it. I don't know if there are any questions or. That's it. Thank you so much, Carl. I'm always fascinated with your numbers, the clarity that you bring to the presentation, and the great service that the public library provides to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Carl. And Matt, if you could just, I know we're one of the very few communities in the state that our public library budget is directly connected to the school district because of the charter. Is that correct, Matt?
Fairport Public Library is actually a school district public library. However, they do have their own board of directors, their own budget process, and so forth. But we do are custodian of the funds and management and payroll and all of those pieces.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Matt, you're up. The school district's 2021-2022 budget.
Once again, thank you very much for your great presentation and service to our community. Carl Cultivate, who is the director of public library. I would also like to say that it was a great scene coming in today. I got here a little bit early. We were able to see some varsity and JV softball out there, varsity and JV track. There was a group of girls lacrosse players who were ready to, I think, go on route to a road trip for a Monroe County lacrosse game. So it's great to see the activity, and that's what this night is about. It's a celebration and an acknowledgement and an intentional understanding that that's where these funds go. It's a way to support our expansive programming, and I just want to start out by acknowledging our Board of Education. As we close every budget season, we start another budget season. Through the summer, we clarify our expectations and goals. As we move through the fall, we look to confirm our budget goals. And ever since I've been superintendent for the past 6 years, we've had those goals consistently. And I think that speaks to the clarity and high expectations of our Board of Education. And then it goes on to Matt Stevens and his team, Chris Eckert, who's does a lot of work in the Treasury department, in our Treasury department, and Monica Shannon, who's the assistant budget director. They do an incredible job of making sure that the dollars are being spent appropriately and categorized. And our administrative team, who helps prioritize, along with our assistant superintendent for HR, Doug Loff, who's here this evening. But also, it goes deeper than that. Our staff gets involved. Our board really wants to hear from the staff and greater community. So they've had their imprint and voice throughout this process. And recently, as we were moving through the budget season, there was a thought exchange where there were over 686 participants, 679 different thoughts, and 34,000 different ratings relative to those thoughts. So we really feel like we have a good bead in an understanding of the high expectations of our community. So when we present this budget, we understand the community's expectations. The board has outlined clear goals and priorities as we move through the budget season. And tonight is a culminating activity where we'll present those goals. We'll share information relative to enrollment in sections, because that impacts programming significantly. And then there's the three-part budget of program, administrative, and capital, which we're required to organize this presentation in those exact categories. Mr. Stevens will then come forward and talk about the revenue and some voter propositions to close out the evening. As I said, the main function and the main expectation is to meet the needs of the whole child, every single day. That is what our Board of Education communicates and is shared through their goals and expectations. We have strategic initiatives that were formed through public interaction. And our board continues to build upon those relative to educational programming. You will not see a school district that has higher expectations for the whole child, making sure that we're preparing students for a diverse and global society, making sure that class sizes are in a way that fosters those very important interactions. And of course, mental health, the social emotional needs of our students is always of utmost importance, and you'll see these pieces resonate throughout our budget process. Diversity, equity, inclusion, instructional technology, and facilities planning were also all goals relative to our strategic initiatives that were confirmed in 2018, and we continue to build upon them and share our progress. And of course, with any budget, we talk about cost containment, position analysis, make sure that we're maximizing our resources to meet the needs, the growing needs, the changing needs of our community. And of course, monitor and strategically utilize reserve funds as needed. The biggest challenge this year was, how do you create a budget coming out of a pandemic? The expectation and the reality is we will be coming back, and we are preparing for full return to school 5 days a week for all of our students, K-12. This budget was built around those expectations. Enrollment, our enrollment trends throughout the past several years. This is my 16th year in the district, and since I was here 16 years ago, we talked about this day. We talked about how there's declining enrollment, and you see it in our class sizes. You'll see anywhere between 420 to 440 as a graduating class moving forward. That's a significant decrease over the past several years. There's been about 0.5% to sometimes as high as 2% decrease in class sizes. We have been monitoring those trends, and we're able to prepare as we move along to make sure that we provide the program, doing it in a fiscally responsible and responsive way that meets the community's expectations. As we prepared this budget, our goal as we transition out of a pandemic is to plan for sections on the lower end of our grade band ranges. And you can see between K2, excuse me, anywhere between 15 to 20 in K1. And then in second grade, you'll have 21 to 24, third grade as well. And then as you move through, the numbers go up slightly. But again, we are creating the budget on the lower ends of those class sizes. You'll see in each of our buildings, as we accommodate for that, some changes in staffing so we can meet the needs of our students, which again, Mr. Stevens will be talking about in a very few moments about how we'll use federal funds to offset those costs. Again, at the secondary level, class sizes range from 23 to 26 in grades 7 and 8, and in grades 9 through 12, 24 to 27. Again, preparing for the lower end of those ranges coming out of a pandemic. We also know that there are anomalies. There are class sizes in special area classes like art, technology, where smaller class sizes are important in relative to the programming. If it's about safety and space limitation, sometimes there's capstone courses that our students take that limit class sizes. But again, those are our community's expectations, and we're proud to offer our students such an expansive array of programming. The summary of major staffing changes include elementary teachers of 4.0 to accommodate K-6 class sizes. Again, those will be increases for elementary teachers of 4.0, and again, paraprofessionals to support transitioning out of a pandemic. There'll be a 6.0 addition. Again, Mr. Stevens will be talking about federal funding that will offset those costs. There's also a district level addition to support school improvement and community engagement as we move forward. The next part is our employee benefits, and you'll see the employee benefits, you'll see a 2.57% increase in all the different categories of programming, administration, and capital. And the employee benefits are set by New York State, and it's set as a percentage of salary. The ERS, their employee retirement contribution rate, is set to increase from 14.6% to 16.2%. Again, those are our non-certified employees. In our teacher retirement system, that's our certified employees. The employee contribution rate is estimated to increase from 9.53 to 9.8. And again, wrapped up in our employee benefits is our health and dental insurance, which is estimated to increase approximately 10%. Workers' compensation rates are also wrapped up, and it's into the employee benefits, and that's based upon how it's been used in the past. Other benefits include FICA Med, life insurance, unemployment, disability, again, all costs of doing business to sustain our thriving organization. Again, you'll see each of our categories have employee benefits of 2.57% increase. The program budget, these are the costs associated with student instruction, support services, and the transportation of over 5,500 students from public to private and our parochial school commitments. Again, these are more than just numbers on a page. They tell a complete story out of our entire programming, our expansive programming, which I'll be sharing a little bit. It's a 2.4% overall increase. Now, there's some line items there in staff development. You'll see an 8.79% increase. That's due to a commitment in professional development and partnerships with outside providers to provide professional development to our staff of BOCES costs that will also ultimately be reimbursed. That's why you see an increase there. You'll see a library, media, and computer instruction increase of 11.53%. That speaks to the district's or the board's commitment to instructional technology. As you know, we had to change on a dime, and our educators did amazing things. We want to continue to build upon what we learned, and there's instructional technology coaches embedded in this line item. And also, there were some areas where we cleaned up, the budget and reallocated funds accordingly. Where you'll see an increase in one area, you'll see it offset in another area, just to make sure we're paying people out of the right codes. A credit to Mr. Stevens and his team. Transfer to special aid fund. Again, that's our expansive special ed programming, our summer commitments to our students. That's why you'll see an 8.7% increase. And again, we're anticipating there's going to be greater needs coming out of the pandemic, and we're going to offset and support our students accordingly. That's been our community's expectations. That's been our board's expectations. And of course, our staff followed suit with similar recommendations. But to go a step further, the program aspect of this budget tells our story. This is where we look at our class sizes and support our class sizes in our K-12 health programming, which is expansive, that meets the needs of our students across the continuum. Performing and graphic arts, our programs rank second to none. We have a vertical music program where our students will form relationships with their music teachers from elementary school all the way up to the time they graduate. And it really is a hallmark trait of our community and one of our students' favorite aspects of those who participate in music. But again, those all come from the general instruction fund, and you'll notice that there's a 1.32% increase there. Again, we're able to provide high quality programming, doing it in a cost-effective way and meet the needs of our students and our community's expectations. We have a continuum of service in special education. Again, it comes out of this program. We're proud of supporting and serving our special ed students, making sure that they have the right programming, the right resources at their disposal internally to support their needs. Our occupational education, which includes our district's commitment to BOCES. We have about 70 students who participate in engineering classes, pre-engineering classes, making sure that if they have an interest in getting certified or technical certification, BOCES offers those services, and we take advantage of that, and we're proud to do that, again, meeting the needs of the whole child. If you take a look at the electives at the high school, 11 business classes, 10 technology classes. These are electives, right? 4 family and consumer science classes, where many districts in Monroe County have stopped providing family and consumer sciences. It's an interest, it serves a need and value to our community. And again, that comes from our occupational educational line item in our budget, which again is seen as a special program in our budget, and that's a 2.4% increase. The story continues. Our mental health services, over 30 mental health professionals are in this district to support the range of needs of our students, making sure that we're connecting students and families to outside resources and also supporting them internally as well. We're proud of the fact that we prioritize mental health. That's a community expectation, especially as we transition out of a pandemic. More than ever, these support services will be needed as we program. Again, there's a separate line item. I'm going back and forth intentionally to support our range of student services, pupil services. There's a 2.01% increase, but more importantly, or just as important, there's co-curricular activities that are in that line item. Those are our clubs. In Fairport, we have over 100 different clubs to provide students K-12. Recently, we've added more clubs to the elementary. Again, based upon student interest, those students are excited to participate after school. Lots of smiles, lots of joy, lots of excitement. Our staff is highly invested in being connected with our students. And this is truly a Fairport expectation and a glowing part and a Fairport point of pride, I should say. Our Board of Education prioritizes co-curriculars. Again, that's grounded in research. The more students are connected to their schools, the more that they will be happy and perform and be successful. That's guided and driven by research and best practices. Our board supports that, and I know our community does as well. Again, summer programming is expansive. As students come out of a pandemic, there'll be more opportunities to interact with them, to build connections, to provide orientations, to make sure that they're transitioning in a safe, organized, comfortable way, because that's going to be our number one priority as we continue to move forward. Technology, hardware, technology coaches, again, part of the program budget. The investment is seen in our library media specialists, again, as 11.53% increase. So that's important to recognize. That's a priority, and that's where you'll see the dollars spent. In all the different electives that I just mentioned, again, there's over close to 98 different electives at the high school. Expansive, high expectations, lots of participation, lots of interest. That does not even account for our honors classes that we offer in our core areas or even our world languages. So we're very proud of the range of programming and opportunities we give our students moving forward. Interscholastic sports, as I mentioned in the beginning, that's part of this budget. It accounts for $1.3 million of our overall budget that we are sharing and providing tonight. So thank you to our Board of Education for prioritizing our programming and seeing our story in this program portion of our budget. The second component here is our administrative budget. It's the cost associated with the administration of the district in each one of our school buildings. There'll be an 8.84% increase in this line item. You'll see that there is an increase of 56.24%. Okay, that is because we have a commitment to our partners in BOCES. Like I said, we have about anywhere between 60 and 70 students participating in BOCES. BOCES is completing a renovation on their site, and that's our portion to pay over the next, I think, another year, I believe, for that commitment. Do you want to?
Yep, it's the BOCES capital project runs for 3 years commitment across the component districts. This is the second year of payment for BOCES. On top of the EMCC students, we also have students in the special needs programs over at BOCES, such as Berg Morgan and some of the other different O'Connor Academy and some of the other different buildings in which their overall capital project entails. So this is the second year of payments on the BOCES capital project. And then there's one more year, which would be the 2022-23 year budget for Fairport.
And again, it's all BOCES aidable.
And this is BOCES aidable, as well as exclusion under the tax cap calculation for schools.
So this 8.84% includes all the supplies, equipment, salaries, and other contractual items within these particular line items. And you'll see a negative 4.12%, because there was some reallocation of dollars to other budget lines in our program budget. You'll see a $50,000 I don't want to say increase. It's definitely not an increase, but it's a $50,000 reallocation, and that's why you see a significant decrease of minus 4.12. And again, there were some other categories that needed to be adjusted with how we were paying our employees for auditing and accounting purposes. That line item has decreased. But again, in order to administer and to organize and to ensure that quality programming occurs, this is the administrative budget. It's up 8.84%. And again, the capital budget, all the costs associated with operating and maintaining our school facilities over the past several years has been an incredible commitment and community voice intertwined throughout this particular area. High expectations of maintaining our facilities. You'll see capital projects that were voter approved that are separate, completely separate from how we budget and support the maintenance and upkeep of our facilities. But again, the board heard loud and clear a few years back as we engaged in a strategic planning initiative that taking care of our facilities is important. And this budget provides opportunities to do that with resources support. There's bus purchases in the capital budget. Approximately every 10 years, we replace our buses, just like you sort of do your own transportation at home. We're replacing 10 buses, 6 71 passengers, 1 28 passenger, and 3 23 passenger seats with wheelchairs. Again, you'll see a decrease because we're not trading in as many, and there are different types of replacements this year. That's why there's less dollars spent on those. Debt service, you'll see that debt is coming off from past projects that we had. That's a good thing. This also includes the public library debt, as Mr. Stevens was sharing earlier. And every year we have an opportunity through New York State to get a capital project that is supported by New York State, where there's reimbursement at a rate to do a capital project. It's a $100,000 project. This year we'll be focusing on flooring at Northside. And anybody who's been Northside, you'll understand why that floor replacement is necessary. Again, this is 12.45% of our total budget. And you'll see a decrease of 1.61 overall in this capital budget portion of our budget. Once again, the 3-part budget in total is a 2.59% increase. You'll see again, the administrative portion of the budget is 8.84%. That's because of our BOCES commitment of the $1.1 million. We are in the second year of a 3-year commitment. Again, those dollars are aidable. So we'll be seeing a payment, but also a reimbursement on the other side of that as we move along. An overall increase of 2.4 in our programming. Again, that tells our story, and a decrease of negative 1.61% for an overall increase of 2.59%. Thank you very much. That is how we are, well, Mr. Stevens is going to talk about how we're going to make a recommendation to pay for these this programming and components of our budget. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. Good evening. So the next portion of the presentation will focus on the revenue portion of the budget, which supports and pays for the expenditure side of the budget. So here you see a representation in graph format surrounding the different revenue categories. The 2 largest pieces for the district surround state aid and our property tax and payments in lieu of taxes. You can see those pieces account for approximately 90% of the overall revenue portion of the budget. We are in a county that still does provide sales tax refunds to schools. So very fortunate Monroe County shares in the sales tax that is earned within the county. You see that number accounts for approximately $4.9 million. Other revenue, we have about $1 million. It's related to BOCES refunds, our curriculum writing, in which flows through the BOCES aidable process. But during the current year, we received the money back for curriculum writing during the school year, any facility use, tuition payments, admissions to events, interest earnings, insurance recoveries, et cetera, fall within the other category. Federal funds, we have Medicaid reimbursement as well as the revenue. And then the other pieces related to the revenue, to balance the revenue side, to have a zero balance budget, would be any of our assigned fund balance, which is monies left over from the current fiscal year that we are assigning to the revenue side of the budget, giving back to the taxpayers in the following fiscal year. And then our general fund reserves. We talk about reserves overall. Comptroller believes in the reserve process. We are assigning $2.3 million of reserves. And then we have debt service fund transfer, which can help offset a portion of the local share of debt of $200,000. So here's a quick summary surrounding the New York State aid to education and the enacted budget. We heard earlier about some of the different federal funding pieces. Overall, as it relates to the state funding, this is the first year in a long time that we've seen a phase in of the foundation aid. For many years, foundation aid has remained flat or minimal increases as a whole. Remember, per formula and law, there actually was a phase-in process that was supposed to be in place many, many years ago. Overall, it is being funded this year with a goal of phasing in over the next 3 years. For Fairport, it's about a $1.3 million increase to our foundation aid. Foundation aid is the general operating aid that schools receive for their programs. There's also expense-based aids like transportation, BOCES, building aid, as well, that fall into the state aid. And you can see overall there's a $781,000 increase for Fairport, primarily related to the BOCES capital project. So we're receiving back the aid. BOCES capital is actually aided in the same year in which the expense occurs. So that's our main increase for the expense-based aids. Federal funding, there are 2 approved sources of federal funds that took place during the fiscal year. One is the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, or CRRSA for short. The other is the American Rescue Plan Act. So both these pieces are supplemental to the state aid that schools will receive. For Fairport, those figures are approximately $5.4 million and $4.2 million. You can see the different time periods in which the grants run for through September of 22 and 23. Also built into the legislation is a 12-month tidings amendment period, which allows for 1 additional year beyond those closing dates to spend the funds. Some considerations with the federal funds, very positive, very supportive overall of education as school districts transition out of the pandemic. As you can see earlier, some of the different pieces in the program budget. We had our class sizes initiative at the elementary level that the federal funds can help support, as well as the paraprofessionals. Things to keep in mind that the district, as we plan over the next few years in the spending of the funds, or sustainability with the foundation aid increase and phase in, again, meant to phase in over the next 3 years. After that, we have a plan and understanding of what the foundation aid would look like beyond that. But at least for the next 3 years, we have an idea in terms of what that phase in will be, which will allow for a little bit more of a long-term budget planning process rather than a year-to-year that school districts have been faced with.
So Matt, can I jump in really quick? On that vein, we will be reaching out, as we have already. The Board of Education has interacted with the criteria, seeing lists and ideas of how we are thinking about those dollars and how they could be spent. There's specific categories. We've reached out to our teacher leaders. We've reached out to our administrators to help prioritize that. We'll also be sharing this with the community at large in the very near future. There needs to be a public hearing around how these dollars are spent. Last night at the public workshop, there was a robust discussion around these funds and the impact that they could have as we transition from the environment we're in to full-time return to school this fall.
Great, thank you. Also, other considerations in looking at in legislation encourage the school districts to prioritize non-recurring expenses, expenses as we go through the next couple of years that would not need to be supported on a recurring basis. And if there are recurring expenses, how will those recurring expenses be funded in a general fund beyond the federal fund availability? So those are all different pieces that school districts are encouraged to think about in the planning process as they are spending the federal funds. A couple other highlights related to the enacted state budget, transportation aid reimbursement for standby expenses through May of 20. That was an important piece. There's a rejected services aid proposal, which proposed to combine 11 of the expense-based aids into one services aid category, which would have been a loss for schools as a whole in terms of and capped some of those reimbursements year to year. And it rejected the local district funding adjustments. Remember, on the executive budget proposal, there's a proposal to take away the equivalent amount to what was in the CRRSA funds. So that $5.4 million was proposed to be taken away from schools. So the CRRSA funds would actually have been a supplant of that money. Instead, that funding adjustment was rejected. So the CRRSA funds are actually a supplement to the state aid itself. Here's a breakdown and summary of the different state aid revenue pieces for the school district. As you can see, the main piece of increase is the foundation aid of 1.3 million, or about a little over 5.5%. And then the transportation, BOCES building aid, those are our expense-based aids of 865,000, primarily related to the BOCES capital project. Excess cost aids, those are aids on our students with special needs, both private placements and public placements in district at BOCES. And then we have our aidable materials, urban, suburban, and tuition aid decrease there, mostly based on enrollment figures in terms of how the calculation takes place for our hardware, software, textbooks, library material aid. Overall, about a 5% increase in state aid, or $2.1 million. Next, we'll talk about the tax cap, commonly known as 2%. As we know, there are exclusions built within the formula. We'll take a look at the formula on the next page here. You can see for Fairport, after the calculation with the tax-based growth factor, you see the allowable levy growth factor about midway down of 1.0123. That means CPI growth over the prior year was 1.23%. That is the figure that will be either 2% or CPI, whichever is less. So if that growth figure was over 2%, the cap is 2% on the growth factor in the calculation. And then our capital levy, that would be the local share to support prior capital projects, as well as our bus purchases and the BOCES capital project. That's an exclusion to add back to the calculation to provide a percent change from prior year of 2.05%, or $81.1 million. Putting together the state aid with the taxes and other revenue, you can see here, main two pieces of growth would be the tax levy at 1.6 million. There is some increase in some payments in lieu of taxes. Those would be related to any industrial development agency agreements, both at the Monroe County level as well as the Village of Fairport level. There have been some additional growth in those payments for pilots related to some build and renovations, reconstruction, and improvements within the county and village. Sales tax and other, a slight increase in the sales tax reimbursements. We did see, based on budget and actual, that we have actually received a little bit more sales tax than anticipated. There was a drop in the prior year during the COVID-19 pandemic early on in the process that we saw a large drop in the sales tax reimbursements, but we have seen that grow back up over the course of the year. So that has been a positive overall. That's netted out with some decreased interest earnings. So interest rates have been lower, naturally decreasing the revenue and interest. And then again, our assigned fund balance, transfer from debt service fund and assigned reserves. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail on the next slide. Here you can see how the fund balance and reserves support the revenue side of the budget. Over the past 5 years, our assigned fund balance has remained relatively steady. You see, we did have an effort back in 1819. We decreased the reliance on the reserves and fund balance by $1 million, which was across both of the assigned fund balance and our assigned reserves. There's been a commitment in 2021 and forward to utilize those reserves to support the revenue side of the budget and help support the expense side and the program and a lot of the different pieces that we're looking to do as we transition out and provide the services that Mr. Provenzano highlighted in the previous slides on the program budget. Here kind of puts it all together in terms of the total expenditure side of the budget. Again, it's the 2.59% increase, the $138.7 million total budget. Our revenues, those are the actual revenues, the state aid, the property tax, the sales tax, the interest earnings, et cetera. Those add up to 132 million. So again, you can see that's about $6 million short on the revenue side. And this is where the transfer from debt service fund and our reserves and fund balance play a key factor in the revenue side of the budget. They help support in the program side and the expense side of the budget by giving back those funds and assigning them on the revenue side. So adding 132 million with the 200,000 and 6.4 million, that brings us to the budget expenditures of $138.7 million. Overall, you can see over the course of the past few years, the percent of the reserves and fund balance to total budget has remained under 5%. You can see naturally, because of the growth in budget, that there's a slight decrease down to 4.6% of the total budget with the reserves and fund balance. So again, looking to try to maintain that through our reserve planning and process and evaluating the reserves, looking at long-term planning and process to help support the budget as a whole. That wraps up the budget side of it. On the ballot, additional proposition to spend funds out of our capital technology reserve fund. These are monies set aside in the capital reserve to help support technology purchases. The district, there's been a plan to ease off of utilizing this reserve to help bring money into the general fund to make purchases. Purchases take place through BOCES. That drives some BOCES aid, expense-based aid back, and working with our tech department. Overall, the final year, planned year at this point to spend out of this reserve is $185,000. Again, that will be appropriated within the general fund if approved, and expenses take place through BOCES to drive BOCES aid in the 22-23 school year. So that will be an additional proposition on the ballot on the vote day.
Just to emphasize, it reflects the board's commitment to instructional technology, especially this past year. How can we support our students, making sure that they have the right resources, not only the right resources, but the right skills and mindset and dispositions in the world that we're living in. There's a renewed spirit and energy around this, and this will be part of our story when it comes to instructional technology. Thank you for that editorial that you allowed me to share, Mr. Stevens.
Yep, and the last slide is.
Last but not least, on May 18th, there'll be the budget vote, this very budget that we presented, and board elections. Again, that's May 18th from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Johanna Perrin Middle School in the gymnasium. Please make sure that you participate and make sure that your voice is heard and your vote counts. We'll be issuing a thought exchange over the weekend, and next week early, we'll give an opportunity again through the thought exchange to answer questions about the budget. We'll be on our social media platform to continue to share what we know and if there's any questions that our community members have. So with that, we appreciate Carl, thank you for coming out and sharing public library and giving us the opportunity to share our presentation of the budget.
And also to remind people that the library budget is also at the same time on the same ballot.
Correct.
Thank you. That concludes our public hearing. Thank you very much for attending in person, and thank you very much for attending online.